It's Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center welcoming in Jeff Paterson, host of RinkWide Vancouver, our Canucks reporter. Jeff, best win of the season?
Yeah, I think so. When you consider the level of opponent, the way that they were playing, Florida came in 6-0-1 in its last 7. So it wasn't like the Panthers came limping into Vancouver on a West Coast road trip. They were humming along, and Canucks obviously shut them down and ultimately shut them out. Loved the start to the game. That's been such a talking point all season. They got the early lead, and then they built on it. How many times have I talked to you guys about one of the downfalls of this group this year is this inability to extend leads? Well, they got it to 2-0 and then 3-0, and hey, why not? Jake DeBrusk has to get a goal just about every game now, it feels like. So I had to get his before they were through. And yeah, I mean, I like the way that it was the depth of the lineup that set the tone. And a lot of talk around Danton Heinen these days of what does he exactly do around here. So it was nice to see him rewarded going to the net. Carson Soucy, I think, has played his best hockey in the last week to 10 days. So, not on the backs necessarily of JT Miller returning to the lineup or any of the stars, in fact. And kind of one of the low-key takeaways from the night was the fact that Quinn wasn't even the highest ice time defenseman. When you have a lead and you can roll all 4 lines and 6 defensemen, for a guy that's been playing half the game here for the last couple of weeks, for him to finish the night at 22, like that's a victory on top of the victory itself.
We've talked about the schedule right now, how it's not crazy, but it's every other night. Like, it's steady crazy. And to have a night like that where, everybody shares the load, where the fourth liners are playing the same as Elias Pettersson, I mean, it's not a night off, but it certainly helps to take away from the night in, night out grind that they've got right now in the month of December.
Yeah, for sure. And you're right. I think that's about as spread as we've seen, because it wasn't that long ago that Höglander was at 6 minutes in Buffalo. There have been others. Rick Tockett's shown a reluctance to use his fourth line, mostly when he shortens the bench. But part of that's because they chase so many games, particularly at home as well. So, yeah, I just think it checked off so many boxes, from getting JT Miller back to Kevin Lankinen. If that's your response to Thatcher Demko returning to the lineup, this is going to be fascinating to watch how this ultimately unfolds for the Vancouver Canucks. But guys, the Canucks have 15 wins on the season, and Lankinen has 14 of them. Like, it's just, any way you come at the Kevin Lankinen story, it is truly remarkable. And for him to have his 3rd shutout, that's a career high already before Christmas. Something about those Eastern teams, shutouts against Philadelphia, Boston, and now the Florida Panthers. So, another night where he was in full control. The rebound control is remarkable. That's one of his real strengths, and had to make a couple of saves. You're going to have to. It's the National Hockey League, but I didn't think there were a ton of standing on his head. Like, Thatcher Demko made better saves the other night against the St. Louis Blues. Lankinen had help in front of him, and ultimately, as the last line of defense, he was there when they needed him. So, full credit to him. He's been a ton of fun to watch, and man, has he been good for this hockey club.
Do you think he has a chance at a Vezina nomination? It's our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question today, Jeff.
I know, and I guess your question begs more questions, because if he does, what does that mean for Thatcher Demko? How does he arrive as a Vezina candidate? Based on what we've seen here through the first 2 months of the season, yes, like, he is in lockstep with the guys that are going to be there at the end of the season. So on this sample size, at the very least, yes, but it is a long year. And we saw, Casey DeSmith had a really good run before Christmas, and then his play fell off. This is a different situation, obviously, and a different goaltender. And I do think that Lankinen ultimately is a little more pedigreed than Casey DeSmith, who's been at this for a while, but I think understands his role, that he's just a really good backup. Lankinen wants to be a starter and has shown an ability to carry the load here in the absence of Thatcher Demko. But now that Demko's back, we'll see how this works. I'm really curious with the week ahead. You've got Colorado, you've got a game in Vegas. Like, those are marquee matchups. And I think we'll get a pretty good read on the coaching staff, what they're thinking, who they feel is up to the challenge here to face those sorts of opponents. I kind of was in the camp of, hey, just alternate between now and Christmas. Blake, you said it's busy, but just the one set of back-to-backs here. I think they could have gone at it that way. And then Lankinen gets in there and throws a shutout, and conventional hockey wisdom is you let the guy run with a shutout. I do wonder if they come back with him against Boston, or the Bruins can't score. They've been absolutely pumped here in the first 2 games of their road trip. it kind of feels like another sort of soft launch for Thatcher Demko. I kind of feel like I'd go with Demko against the Bruins and save Lankinen for Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen and Cale Makar and the Colorado Avalanche on Monday.
To the age-old question, who gives you the better chance to win tomorrow? God, I think it's Lankinen. Jeff, Lankinen, Kiefer Sherwood, and it's only a couple of weeks since we've been singing Kiefer Sherwood's praises, who continues to do good work. Don't get me wrong; it's just he's not top of the discussion around the team right now. And DeBrusk with 14 goals, which is tied for 17th in the league and the most amongst any UFA signing. Like, is this the greatest free agent class in Vancouver Canucks history? Like, you've been covering the team 25 years here. Can you think back at a summer where they added this degree of contributor in one free agent class?
Not off the top of my head. So, yeah, I mean, when you think back of some of the high-priced free agents that they brought in, I mean, I've been at this long enough to remember Mark Messier. I wasn't here when they signed him, but my first year covering the Canucks full-time was his final year. Obviously, that one didn't quite go the way that he or the hockey club had hoped. But then, you look at some of the other pieces. Radim Verbato obviously was terrific in his first year as a Vancouver Canuck. Willie Mitchell, there was a splash there. But in terms of impact and, not just one guy. Like, I'm picking one guy off the top of my head for various years here. But to have this sort of contribution from a number of guys. And, Matt, you rattled off a number of the things. Like, I was surprised. Like, DeBrusk's been scoring in bunches here. He sort of feels unstoppable. We've heard about the streaky thing, but after the game last night when I looked, and since November 1st, he leads the National Hockey League. He's tied with Mikko Rantanen since November 1st in goals scored. Like, that's pretty remarkable company to keep, and it tells you about the run that he's on. He went those first 9 games of the season without a goal, and so all 14 of his have come in the last 19 hockey games. We wondered about when would he score at home, and now it's like, will he ever stop scoring at home? He has arrived, and so many of his goals coming right around the net in the blue paint, and, that's repeatable. He's not going to get every bounce. It kind of feels like everything that wasn't going for him early is going for him right now, but my goodness, is he on a hot streak? And that's the other thing, 14 goals now in 2018 games. Like, that's a goal every other game. I don't know about you guys, but I think 25 to 30 was sort of the ballpark that we expected for a high-priced free agent coming in, getting an opportunity probably to play with Elias Paterson, probably to get some power play looks. And here he is with 14 goals through 28 games. Dare we think of him as a 40-goal scorer? I mean, that's probably getting ahead of ourselves, but he certainly has set himself up to take a good run at 30 in his first year as a Vancouver Canuck.
And that is his goal, as stated at the beginning of the year.
The depth players could have used a little punch, as you talked about, with Heinen and Sasson jumping. Do you think any of that's sustainable? Because the team gets a lot better, even with his defensive deficiencies, if there is contributions from up and down the lineup. And that's what I think that they were going for when they bolstered the winger depth in the offseason. How many of these guys do you think can – they don't have to go on DeBrusk runs, but do you think they can start to dabble a little bit more here?
Well, it is remarkable what the return of one player at the top of the pyramid in JT Miller does in the trickle-down effect, and everybody just looked properly slotted. Now, Nils Höglander got a great opportunity. The energy was there. At some point, he's going to have to do something with chances to play with JT Miller and Brock Besser, and the goal streaks up to 23. So, it was a great win for the Canucks. I don't want to pick at some of the guys that didn't perform, but it's going to be curious to see if Höglander can make the most of that opportunity. But otherwise, we've seen Sherwood play with Paterson and DeBrusk, and in short runs out on that road trip, that line had a bunch of success. Garland and Joshua, they want to keep those two guys and hope that they can build the chemistry. And now with Pia Suter back there in the middle, that's an intriguing third line, and we know what they can do when they're on their game, and I just don't know that Joshua's there yet, but it was nice to see him score the other night at the very least. And then you had a fourth line, like Teddy Bluger is back where he probably should be on a depth chart when you're slotting guys. Fourth line center who can give you some really solid penalty killing utility as well, smart player, low maintenance, and where Ratu's been trying hard, and look, Ratu's 22. Like, there's lots of room to grow here still in his game. And, that was the first time that he came out of the lineup since early November. So he'd had a nice run of games, but he doesn't have to be an everyday player for the Vancouver Canucks. And the decision then to sit Ratu and allow Sasson to stay in the lineup. And boy, he looked confident last night. The wheels are certainly there. It's pretty clear that the coach likes what he has seen from Max Sasson, and 4 points in 9 games for a guy that truly been injected as a depth guy and moved from the middle to the wing or the wing to the middle. Just a likable personality, obviously. We saw the big reaction from the family. So lots of good going on for Max Sasson, who talked after the game about, that he feels he belongs here now. And I think based on his performance, it's hard to disagree. Like, he looks like one of the 12 best forwards that the Vancouver Canucks have at their disposal right now.
He doesn't even look like a plugger. Like, he's not a good plugger. Like, there's confident skating there. There's speed. There's strength. Like, again, don't want to overblow it one night, but we've talked about this before, about his skating and his poise and confidence. It's just, it came together, and he made it look easy in the first period, Jeff. Like, it was kind of strange.
Well, I think you see the guys that have the ability to scoot around the ice. Like, it's such a benefit, right? Like, if you can push the pace at this level, and then the league gets faster on a daily basis. So when you can step in and you don't look out of place with your skating, then it allows you to do other things. And we saw it in his debut in Ottawa there, where he down the wing peels off, create a little space, and found the trailer, who was Bluger, and Bluger scored there. So an assist in his NHL debut. He picked up an assist in, it was his second game, I guess it was, because he sat out the Boston game on the Ratu goal. You're not looking for a ton of production, but you do want shifts spent in the offensive zone. You want your fourth line guys to wear down opponents and not have to defend. And that's happened a little too much with whatever iterations they've had of their fourth line. But Sasson moved so quickly, and man, he was into it last night. And heads up play to get the puck onto the stick of Carson Soucy. And then I love the pass to Danton Heinen. And if you're not scoring the way Heinen hasn't been here, and I think the same thing applies for Dakota Joshua the other night, sort of textbook 101, like, go to the net, stick on the ice, and hope that the puck arrives there as well. And both of those guys have been rewarded with goals, and you just hope that alleviates some of whatever pressure they've been feeling to contribute. But that was really through the lineup last night. Fourth line, bottom pair defenders, whatever the case, everybody was pulling on the rope in the right direction.
Miller, a hell of a night and a hell of a reception from the fans at Rogers Arena. We're learning more and more in drips and drabs about his absence. Elliot Friedman saying he's got to bend to the room and the room's got to bend to them. What did you make of that comment, Jeff, and synthesize the JT Miller return game for us?
Yeah, I think the comment just sort of backs up this idea that maybe JT pushes it a little too far at times in that locker room, and it is ultimately a team game. And we all know what his role is and how good he could be for the hockey club. But if there were things happening behind closed doors that they felt, he just had to bring it back a little bit. Bending is, I suppose, one of the terms you want to use. Whatever the case. He didn't want to get into it yesterday when we met with him. That's fine. He laid down the ground rules, and it was 3 minutes of relatively tame and mostly hockey questions. So, he didn't pull us behind the curtain then, and I don't know if he ever will. I don't think that JT Miller's likely to be an open book to draw us around for story time with JT to, tell us exactly what went on for the 10 games that he was away. But for him to jump back into the lineup, guys, and contribute. We talked about the fact that Tocchet was able to sort of put governors on him and Quinn Hughes, but still 2 assists. Like, if he came back and it was 3 games without a point, and he's starting to wonder, like, where's my game? Does that frustrate him in any way? I think it was a terrific reintroduction to the lineup. Was there any world in which Rick Tocchet wasn't going to put him in the opening face-off to get the Al Murdoch introduction? And sure, the Panthers fill out their lineup and it's Barkov, so that was the matchup they were looking for early, but that one felt like the surest bet around, that Al Murdoch would really be the guy that welcomed JT back. I will say, and you guys probably saw some of the video as well, I think a lot of people noticed this on Tuesday against St. Louis. We've seen it for a lot of the home games. They haven't been very good at home. I don't know what that does in terms of walk-up and last-minute ticket sales, but the Florida Panthers, the Stanley Cup champs with a West Van guy in Sam Reinhart, make their one and only visit to Vancouver, and boy, at puck drop, it was like 50% capacity in there. So the people that were in their seats, yeah, they gave JT a throaty welcome back, but we're seeing this on a nightly basis again, and it just sort of feels like they've reached a threshold where tickets are...
Does it fill up later though, Jeff? Like puck drop is a principally bad time to judge attendance. Like we were always told, wait till late first period, even second period.
It does fill up, Matt. Yes, it fills in. I don't know that it fully fills up. And if I'm not mistaken, they've come like close. I think they announced they were a couple hundred short of a sellout last night. But I think they've had one official sellout this season.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
I mean, you go into Ticketmaster and you can see the resale tickets and the indigenous tickets, and there's still unsold real tickets every single night.
It's almost like they price them a little too rich for the market coming off their first playoff appearance in 9 years.
I think this will be a big test. Boston on a Saturday, and I know that the Bruins aren't what they once were, and maybe the rivalry isn't, but into the holiday season, Boston on a Saturday night followed by Colorado. Like, if you want star power and you're thinking of guys that are going to be worth the price of admission, Makar, Rantanen, McKinnon, obviously, and the Hughes-Makar match. Like, there's a lot in that. Mm-hmm. It's a Monday night, but I am curious to see, can they absolutely fill Rogers Arena for these next couple of home games to close out the homestand?
Vincent Desharnais is on the block, Jeff. Is there any salvaging this, and are they going to have to pay someone to take this contract off their hands?
Yeah, I get that the Canucks are looking, that it hasn't been a fit, and we've seen this with a number of players, most recently Daniel Sprong, but the list is getting a little bit longer here as we go with players that they make their decision and they move off them. And I think at some point that is admirable to try to cut your losses, but it also, for all the praise that this management group is getting about pro scouting and player identification, there have been a few swings and misses, and I guess that's going to happen as well. Desharnais is, and he's only been here a short while, but he truly is one of the most engaging fellows that I have been around. When I talked about story time with JT, I think Vincent Desharnais would love to have that as a feature. He would probably sit and just regale you with stories. Talked at training camp about how his dad drove trucks or drives trucks for a living, and his dad said, like, you have been blessed with an opportunity here, make the most of it. And so he's never lost sight of the fact that he's in the NHL, even when he's not playing. He was one that said there's no bad days in the National Hockey League, but there have been some bad nights in the National Hockey League when he's been on the ice. And I think this management group and the coaching staff thought that they waved the magic wand with Tyler Myers last season, and they could just do it again, basically a repeat of a 6'7" giant on the right side, and it's turned into way more of a project. And so now that you've got Forbort back, and man, I don't know about you guys, I get really strong Alex Biega vibes from Mark Friedman. Slightly different players, but undersized right side defensemen that can get around the ice, play bigger than they are, not afraid to engage, and just the ultimate teammate that understands. Like, Biega was the ultimate depth guy. Like, he totally got it. Harvard educated, but he got it. That he wasn't going to be an every night player, but boy, when they tapped him, he had to be prepared and ready to go. And I give Friedman a lot of credit here. Like, it can't be a ton of fun to just sit and watch and practice, but not get to play. And so he stepped in, and it feels like a bunch of these guys have edged in front of Vincent Desharnais on the depth chart. And as much as they love their size, at some point, the name of the game is getting out of your own end and moving the puck up ice, and there aren't a lot of puck skills with Desharnais, and maybe they're seeing that this is turning into more of a project than they had imagined. Whatever the case, I'm not surprised that it's come to this, and ultimately we'll see. But to your question about will they have to pay this year and next at $2 million, like, I can't imagine there are a ton of teams knocking on their door to get their hands on Vincent Desharnais, so they can shop him all they want, but ultimately, how do you consummate that deal?
Yeah, and it may not be just have to pair him with a draft pick to give him away. You may have to put him in a larger deal where he's baked in as a liability.
I find it hard to believe that
an
he's
asset.
not tradable closer to the deadline with playoffs lingering, that somebody's not going to get intrigued by a massive dude for the playoffs.
Massive right shot, too.
Incidentally, on Friedman, I was talking to Corey at Canucks Army the other night, and he gets out to Abbotsford Canuck games. He says he's amongst the best defensemen on the ice when he plays for the Abbotsford Canucks. Like he's not going to be a slick player like Quinn Hughes, even at the AHL level, but it's very clear that he is at worst a quad A player.
Yeah.
If not, a great number 7 guy to have in your lineup.
Yeah, I mean, the ultimate tweener, and probably a tweener who leans towards the National Hockey League as opposed to the American Hockey League. And you heard Rick talk about his preference for lefties and righties, and we've seen that together. And, Forbort back after 6 weeks away, I thought was fine. 19 minutes for Derek Forbort, some penalty-killing utility there. But I need to see more of him, and he's a guy, puck skills aren't at the top of the list of things that he brings to the mix here. He's a big body that hopefully can be physical and veteran presence and all that kind of stuff. Are they going to move forward now and give Forbort and Friedman a little bit of a run as the third pair? And based on the early results, I would say that's probably the case. But where does that leave Eric Brandstrom? He's been a healthy scratch for 2 straight games now. And if Forbort's likely to be a mainstay, and I don't see him as a guy that's, if he's healthy, he's coming out of the lineup as a left shot. I think Brandstrom's going to have to be patient here. So
really, you don't see a world where they have a game like they did against St. Louis where puck transportation was such a problem, and he tries Brandstrom there?
I think Brandstrom will play for the Canucks again, but I don't know that he's going to jump the queue and get ahead of a guy like Derek Forbort. I thought last night, even the third pair, I thought they did a nice job of moving the puck quickly.
They did.
Moving the puck smartly. It's not about the 75-foot stretch pass all the time. It's the puck moves faster than players do, and so just getting it around the forecheck, getting it to the guy who's in the right spot on the sidewall to initiate the breakout. I thought they did a pretty nice job of that. Didn't get hemmed in their own zone. So, look, I don't have the answer for where it goes from here for Brandstrom. His play has slipped. Rick Tocchet had alluded to that yesterday. I would agree with it. I look at the Tampa game and the 4-minute power play early where Hughes is out of the game. They look to Brandstrom. And he's not sitting because he didn't do anything on the power play there, but that felt like an opportunity missed for Eric Brandstrom to really step in and make something happen there to sort of turn some heads and think, all right, this is a guy that we have to have in the lineup on a nightly basis. But in the short term, a 4-0 win over the Champs, I'd be hard-pressed to think that Rick Tocchet's going to change his lineup other than perhaps in goal on Saturday night.
Okay. Marvelous stuff, Jeff. We'll be listening to RinkWide on the weekend, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, guys. Have yourself a great weekend.